And welcome back. The past few weeks, we've heard a lot about Pride here in Colorado. June was Pride Month, a celebration of LGBTQ equality. Well, this year marked the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which sparked the LGBTQ civil rights movement. But as I recently found out, many people don't know what the movement or Stonewall are really about. We are joined today by Scarlett Bowen, the Director of Education for CU Boulder Center for Inclusion and Social Change. And I want to talk about the Stonewall riots of 1969 because, we just celebrated a milestone, yet a lot of people are not familiar with the LGBTQ rights or the civil rights movement, I guess I should say.
No, and I can definitely speak to that as a professor of LGBT studies, that I'm continually surprised that students, even LGBT students, but also straight students, have never heard of Stonewall. And here it is, the 50th anniversary, and they also haven't heard much about LGBT civil rights at all, the history of the movement.
And I think, talk about the significance.
The significance of that series of civil protests, I think, it's such a turning point for the civil rights movement, because what had existed prior was very much focused on there was a movement that was focused on legislative changes, but it was also very focused on hiding your identity in public and conforming to traditional gender norms. And when Stonewall broke out, that was the first time where the LGBTQ community said, you're going to give us respect and equality on our own terms, and we're not going to keep hiding and putting up with the police harassment, which was routine, and that's how Stonewall began.
And at that point, right, if you were outwardly gay, you could be arrested.
You could be arrested. You could be fired from your job.
I bet your children could be surprised at hearing this.
They are. They really are. Yeah. So I really commend California. They passed what was called the Fair Education Act in 2011, and now in K through 12 schools, LGBT content is taught, and it's made a world of difference. And I hear it from my students. If they said, if I had known this before, it would have been life-changing for me, and it would have changed how my peers relate to me.
In fact, I was going to ask you, how is it significant today? Why is what happened in 1969 significant today?
I think just seeing it as such an integral part of our U.S. civil rights history, right? It was right there, right alongside the Black civil rights movement, the women's civil rights movement, anti-Vietnam War protests. It was just a complete part of that landscape of civil protests during that time. So it's an essential part of our history, and I think it continues to fuel people's sense of pride and self-worth to see the contributions that people have made for decades to the country.
So what was it about the 60s at that time that all of these civil rights movements were happening?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I'm not a U.S. historian, I'll say that to start with, but I think it was just a sea change in terms of people not wanting to put up with, say, the McCarthy scare, which was really targeting people of all kinds of identities and blacklisting them and preventing them from employment. And so something had to change, right? This history had to change, and I think you see it in all the movements of that time, that there's a less emphasis on the politics of respectability and more just meet us where we are, who we authentically are, and we deserve respect and equal treatment based on that.
Equal treatment certainly is not always the case. We hear a lot of violence against the LGBTQ community. So
yes.
How do you move that to the next level, and how,
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think about that a lot, especially the rates of violence against transgender people is very high, including in Colorado. We have our own tragic history and stories. It was just last April that Amber Stone was brutally attacked. And then we also have a history of Fred Martinez being attacked and murdered in 2001, a Navajo transgender youth. Angie Zapata, 2008,
right,
whose murder also informed Colorado's hate crime legislation. So to your question, you're asking, what do we do about this? How can we tackle this? I think for sure the kind of legislative victories that we're having, especially in Colorado, Colorado is really just doing a fabulous job getting a lot of new policies and legislation passed through that is protective of the transgender community. But in addition to that, I really think we need that K through 12 education to start instilling people a sense of understanding, empathy of this community. It needs to start early on. And I also think we need much more like just direct services to transgender people and really helping them out of poverty and into gainful employment. Again, the employment discrimination for transgender people is also super high. And it just snowballs, right? When you marginalize...
You can't get a job. Yeah. You can't live, you can't eat, you can't...
You're not in safe conditions. Yeah.
Do you think that that's realistic to see that someday we will have K through 12 education about the LGBTQ community?
If California can do it, I think Colorado can do it. Yeah. So it might go state by state, but I think that would be great. And I know some individual teachers are brave in introducing content here and there, but the California Fair Education Act requires it to be taught age appropriately in all grades.
All right, well, we'll keep watch and see what happens. Thank you so much, Scarlett Bowen. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.